Hey, what's up people, how's it going? It's Soundyman here for another video game review. Today I'm looking at Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor. I was never a big Lord of the Rings fan like Casey and Kahuna. I watched the first two movies for the first time last year and I couldn't get to the third one. I can't think of any outstanding flaws that made me stop watching it, it just never held my attention. It's strange to me because I usually really enjoy fantasy stories. Of course I like things like Game of Thrones, but I also enjoyed what I read the Rift War saga in the Belgariad. And that extends to games where RPGs with fantasy settings usually top my favorites. I love Dragon Age Origins back in the day, and I played a ton of Baldur's Gate when I was a kid, and Skyrim has been my personal game of the year for the past 3 years. But since I'm not too big into Lord of the Rings, I hadn't heard about this game until Casey mentioned how hype he was for it early last month. Him also raving about how good the reviews were also caught my attention, and I'm personally dying for some great breakout games this year, so I picked it up and here's what I thought.
Story.
The story follows a man named Talion. He is a ranger on the Black Gate in Mordor with his son and wife. When Sauron returns to Mordor, he and his Black Hand take over the gate, killing Talion, his family, and the rest of the garrison. Talion's body becomes intertwined with an elf wraith, who seeks vengeance against Sauron. Talion is reanimated and begins working together with the Wraith to hunt down those who killed his family and his friends.
Then how do we break this curse? We find the one who cast it on us.
The story takes place quite a while before The Hobbit. From what I understand, the game is not canon with the rest of the Hobbit universe, but still feels very Tolkien-like. I like the inclusion of actual characters and references to people from the novels, but a lot of it feels like blatant fan service. If you somehow avoided Lord of the Rings up until now, you'll be very confused when there's little to no backstory given to a lot of the characters. They drop names like Saruman without explaining anything and just figure that the player will know who they are. The characters actually created for the game are also very thin. Most of them randomly show up during a mission and then Talion is instantly the best of friends with them after having known each other for only a couple minutes.
My mother said you would be here. And here you are.
The game definitely rushes through the plot, and if it weren't for the open world and the side missions, this would be a very short game. I don't think that the plot will win any awards, and there's not much to say about it because it pretty much just goes through the motions of a basic fantasy story. I wasn't really expecting much on the plot, mostly because I don't really know anything about Lord of the Rings, but I'm guessing if you're a fan of the universe, you'd want more than what Shadow of Mordor put forth. I like good stories in RPG games, so this was a bit disappointing.
Gameplay.
The gameplay has been compared to Assassin's Creed, and that's pretty fair to say. It does have a lot of vibes that an Assassin's Creed game would give off. You have eagle vision where you can look through walls, the fighting feels very similar to Assassin's Creed, and Talion can scale any walls or buildings in the game. They even have the whole viewpoint synchronization thing with anvil towers replacing the eagle perch. And to get off of them, you even have to leap of faith. I wouldn't say they've been very successful with recreating the climbing in Assassin's Creed though, because it feels very stiff in this game. In Assassin's Creed is very smooth and it flows well. In this game you just sort of snap to whatever it wants you to. I think the main thing is that in Assassin's Creed it's not always directly up that it takes you. Sometimes I had to jump at a slight angle for a foothold, which may seem small, but it definitely breaks up and prevents it from being a monotony of climbing up everything like it was a ladder. In this game it feels very mechanical. How games feel is probably the most difficult thing to describe, but basically it's not as good as Assassin's Creed. Of course it wouldn't be though, because that's one of the main selling points of that series, and this one just has it for the functionality. I enjoyed it anyway, and is way better than having you only climb up ladders to get to higher places. The biggest inclusion for all that is probably the sneaking, which you have to do a lot of. I was reading people's thoughts about the game, and a lot of them talked about the beginning tutorial where it's teaching you the controls, and a ton of people mentioned the sneaking up on your wife and kissing her scene in the beginning. Some say it's weird that you're learning how to assassinate by swapping for kissing, but I think people are just overanalyzing it. Maybe it's because I'm a 21-year-old white kid who doesn't leave his house, but this wasn't a huge moment in the game for me. It's the tutorial. You figure out sneaking and assassinations in a second when the Black Gate is overrun and it tells you how to do it again. That part's just for exposition on how Talion is supposed to be a cute and a family man. But I'm probably just drawing too much attention to this, and I should stop talking about it. The crouch walking behind enemies and stabbing your sword through their skull is fun. You'll be doing a lot of straight-up combat as well, and luckily in this game, the fighting feels really good. It's been a while since I played a Batman Arkham game, but I think this reminds me of it. Fights can get very heated when there are a ton of enemies around you, and it's so satisfying to chew through it all and kill the last guy. You have to attack, counter, dodge, and stun. Later on, you can also buy upgrades so you can do other moves like insta-kills and the splash stun, which are both charged by getting long hit streaks. You also have your Wraith Bow with a few shots, which you replenish by either grabbing arrows around you or by draining enemies. The bow is pretty powerful, so they only let you hold 4 arrows at once and then 6 with upgrades. Of course, it can then be upgraded to do different things like teleport assassinations. I really enjoy the upgrades you can do in this game. A lot of times, it's usually just like you can hold more ammo or do more damage, but in this game, it's really cool because you actually unlock unique abilities you can actually use. One of the main draws of this game is the officer system, which I had hours of fun with. There are specific enemies in the game that have personalities, strengths, and weaknesses. They're all randomly generated too. You have to find out who the officers are and where they lurk by interrogating enemies. The officers can also randomly show up and start fighting you if you unknowingly run into one. The best part about them is that they just feel real. In my 14 hours of playing, I think I only heard a repeated line once or twice. They really work the voice actors to the bone because all the lines are really varied and unique. They all feel like they have personalities, with some being weird rhyming people, and some being diseased and killing you for a cure, and others just being straight up crazy. It's really cool that any enemy in the game can also become one of these rivals against you.
I'm looking forward to being a captain.
The game feels really alive because of the random nature it has. Sometimes death isn't impermanent for the officers, and they might come back and seek vengeance against you.
Does this scar look familiar? You gave it to me.
I don't have it recorded, but one time an officer I defeated a while ago came back with his face all bandaged, and he started yelling about how he straight up hates me for everything I did to him. You could feel the rage in his voice, and I honestly felt bad for him until he started attacking me and I murdered him again. He never showed up after that. That'll teach that bitch not to ever
Graphics and design.
The game takes place in Mordor, obviously. Everything on the ground is usually muddy and a bit brown, and there are towering structures and walls every now and then. There's another area that you go to as well, but it also looks pretty gloomy. The color scheme is a bit drab for this game, and I think it could have benefited from some more variety. While playing the game, it would lag a lot for me when trying to record, so if some parts of this review has had some stuttery footage, that's why. But otherwise, the game ran pretty smoothly with my 660 Ti at these settings. Sadly, I couldn't go up to the best of quality, but what I did see was nice looking. I felt like the camera could have been a bit more zoomed out though. Sometimes they clipped into walls weirdly during the officer conversations as well, but all in all, I like the graphics in this. Though I think the design should have been a bit more colorful, and the different location you visit to be a bit more different. And now onto the sound. I want to emphasize that the voice acting in this game is amazing. The script works really well and the voice actors did their job perfectly. There are a ton of lines and they're all nicely varied and mixed up. I never ran into a part where I thought the voice acting or the script was bad. The sound effects are good as well and the music is decent, but it's just not as good as I would like it to be. I think it could be improved, but it doesn't detract from the game. It's just not as impactful as I would like it to be.
Conclusion.
Before I get to my thoughts, let's hear from the other members of nukedpixels for their opinion on this game.
Alright, what is up guys? Casey here, bringing you my quick thoughts on Shadow of the Mordors. I haven't beat this game yet, but I've been playing it for about a week now. I have about 15 hours in. I'm about 15 hours in, and I think I'm about 50% done with the game, give or take a little bit. And so far, I'm really enjoying the game. You gotta go into the game knowing what to expect though. Basically, the developers, they took Assassin's Creed, they threw it in a bowl with some Arkham Asylum and some Lord of the Rings elements. They mixed in some mayonnaise, stirred it around, and out came Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. It's not really revolutionary in how the game is structured. It's like a generic open world type thing. You're going around Mordor, killing orcs and everything. But the one thing that sets this game apart, and that is fresh and unique, is it has something called the Nemesis system, which I'm sure Soundyman talked about in this review and explained, where orcs that kill you, or even just certain designated orcs, are like captains in Sauron's army, and they're fully voice acted, and they have dialogue, and they have different traits, different weaknesses and strengths, and it's really cool because you'll be fighting these guys, and they'll be popping up randomly in your game, and you kind of form these mini stories with these certain orc creatures, which is weird. You wouldn't think you'd be forming stories with orcs and stuff like that. It's just strange. It's a strange thing. It really makes the game unique and cool, though, and I hope this Nemesis system is in other games in the future. But overall, I like the game a lot. I can't give it a review because I haven't beat it, but it's an action game, and it's a lot of fun to kill bad guys, and then the Nemesis system just makes everything cool. So, hope you guys understood this because I'm babbling, and I'm going to go eat a cheeseburger. So, peace out.
Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor is basically Assassin's Creed, Batman, and Lord of the Rings mixed into one game. It takes a lot of ideas from Assassin's Creed as well as Batman, and basically makes them better, while adding a little bit of charm on its own. For instance, the Way the enemies, you have basically rivals, which are amazing. I love that whole system. It's very well done. The amount of time must have taken to do that is simply, it must be ridiculous, because it's a great system. I wish all games had this system, because it brings that much more variety and that much more fun to the game. The story isn't that long, but this whole rivalry thing with the orcs, basically giving them their own life, their own, their own story, and basically makes the game even longer. Because I don't know, I've played so much this game, not even doing the main missions, just running around killing captains and making new rivals and getting killed, and it's very fun. The only gripe I have is that, well, two gripes is, one, the story is too short, and two, I do not like the climbing in this game. It just doesn't seem as fluid as it could have been. For a game that relies so heavily on it, it would be nice if they had, made it a little bit more fluid. The combat's fluid, but the way and the rest of the gameplay is, but the way the climbing, it just doesn't work for me. Love the stealth, and this is a tentative score since I haven't beaten it yet, but I believe that this is a 9 out of 10, and it is a very good game.
I said at the beginning of this review that I was dying to play a great breakout game. So far, I hadn't really run into anything that could be a contender for my game of the year, and after playing this, I wouldn't be angry if this was it. Shadow of Mordor does so many things right that it should be forgiven for the few flaws that it has. The game does let me down in the storytelling department, with a few side characters not being explored enough and a plot that feels too short for an already existing universe, with great lore just ready to be exploited. It's also disappointing that Warner Brothers held back a big cinematic fight and other interesting looking game modes for DLC content. As I said though, Shadow of Mordor should be forgiven for these few flaws, because the game is just so fun. Hopefully there's a sequel which improves the plot and fixes up the few iffy controls present, but if nothing else, this is a very solid game and I'll be playing it for a while. Thanks for listening to this review. I wanted to make this as soon as possible after the game came out, so I really busted my ass to play through Shadow of Mordor as fast as I could. But I did kind of get lazy on the review, and some other things came up, so it was a bit delayed. It didn't come out as soon as I hoped it would, and also kind of messed up my whole weekly review thing coming out, so this is coming out on, like, I'm thinking it might come out on Sunday. I'm actually not done with it yet, so I still need to finish editing together, so I'm just talking to Audacity at the moment. But that's how we do. We make that conclusion before we finish the entire thing. I'm amazing. But yeah, this was a really great game, and I had a fun time playing it, so. Yeah, so if you want to watch some more nukedpixels videos, I would appreciate it. You can also comment and like the video. You don't have to like the video, but at least comment. Casey heard me last time on the Watch Dogs review say how much, it's like, you can like her, just give a comment, but you don't have to, it's fine. And he was like, dude, you're too soft. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, but you just do whatever you want, man. I just like getting some kickbacks, knowing that people were watching and that they're, just watching it. I don't care if you didn't enjoy it. I mean, if you put in time to go in this far, just, tell me your thoughts, and I'll keep trying to improve so I can become the greatest and work at IGN. Yeah. Alright. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Whose outro is that? Did I just rip someone off? I think I might just rip someone off there. Whatever.